Hey, it's Catherine again. I just listened to my previous video and there was a terrible noise, so I'm going to do it again. So, what you heard will be deleted if you were hanging there with me, but that was a terrible sound. Anyway, so we know that the microphone, it worked really well with testing, but not so much with the live run. So, anyhow, chapter 9. We left Helena. She married Volomir. Her she really didn't feel she had any choice because she's in a bad place with Huns, and his also Volomir is a very good person, and she's lucky in some respects. Although she's lost her whole world, her son's died. It's been pretty horrific, but things weren't so easy in the 400s. Okay, chapter 9. Round 2. Sparking the flames, a stick dropped in the fire. In the orange light, Valomir's face was harsh and menacing, a warrior's mask. His passionate gentleness was gone, vanished as if it had never been. Once again, Helena felt adrift, lost in his strangeness, yet somehow not afraid. He drew himself to his full height and frowned. Helena, I'll come back after I inspect the men. Her throat was choked. Be careful. A smile transformed his face. I always watch my back. Without another word, he left. The knowledge of Grelia's return made her cold. The small fire burning brightly could not warm the chill in her bones. You made him happy, Karatepen said. She did not follow his reasoning. What? Volomir, you bring a smile to his lips, just like when he was a boy. She shook her head. Seeing him just now, I wouldn't want him as an enemy. Karatepen chuckled to himself, a rich sound, as it should be, else how could he keep us safe? Huns respect his strength. Yet he's good to me, she whispered. Karatepen smiled, his blue eyes lively. His childhood training was excellent. Helena teased him gently. Nothing to do with you? Everything. He has the best of my teaching. And Bevian Thudamir, I mean. Wasn't he your charge at an even younger age? His lips became a thin line. He shook his head sadly. I did what I could with him. He missed his mother terribly. I'm sorry, Helena said, ashamed to upset him. Karatepen shrugged. Waving his hand to dismiss her concern, he began his repairs on Valomir's bow. She watched him restring it, check its tension, then oil the wood. Later, as he lined feathers on the arrows with painstaking attention, Lena wished for something to do. Her right hand still throbbed, and when she breathed deeply, her chest was tight with pain. Her life hung in Valomir's hands. He was a barbarian, a predator, yet he had penetrated the gray cocoon wrapped around her heart, bringing color back to her world. It hurt to feel. She sat in silence with Karatepen as he hummed over his work. By contrast, Lena felt useless. Sorrow stirred within her, but she turned away from it. It was dangerous, the agony too intense to bear. She drifted to the past, to her grandfather, and to Constantinople. In the courtyard of their large stone house, she had sat spellbound, listening as he made history come alive with tales of the ancients, especially Alexander the Great. Of course, he would always call him Secunda the Destroyer, the despoiler of Persia. Her grandfather had sought her opinion about the current court gossip. In the process, he had taught her to see past the intricate maze of the political game to the truth. He had been her world, yet he could never assuage her loneliness. Though she had never known her mother, dead since her birth, Lena's heart would ache at the sight of a woman bending down to her child with a smile. Her father's visits were so rare as to be momentous events, but she could still picture him. He looked like his father, Bluthastram, tall, rather austere, dark hair, his eyes a startling blue, a voice that could boom with sudden laughter. Once in disagreeing with her grandfather, she saw him smile with pure mischief. He had filled the house with activity, always restless, seeming to chafe at the boundaries imposed by the stone walls. Lena knew he would never have survived as a woman in Canspar's house, where women were expected to be docile, submissive, and always patient. Lena wished that her father had been settled down, remarried, or even sent messages home. If they received word of him, her grandfather would not have set off on that journey. He might still be alive, her life intact in Constantinople. Though Mikhail would not have been born, his spirit would have come to her through another child, spanning time in its search for an old connection bound from love. For the first time, she hated her father. She blamed him for her heartbreak, for everything, and realized that she did not want to see him. In her mind, he became just another soldier, seeking oblivion and glory, neither caring for nor remembering his daughter. Her inner voice whispered that her life had merged with Valimir step by step, with an inevitability that set apart from time. She rebelled against it, categorizing the Goth with her father, a self-centered soldier. Thinking only of himself, the voice of her heart dissented. She was drawn to Valimir, as inexorably as a bird to the sky, but the price was too high and red with Mikhail's blood. Tired and spent, she was afraid of sleep, of what her dreams would bring. From a distant village, the wolves howling carried on the wind. Helena knew for certain that the Huns had finished their nightmare games, leaving behind corpses for carrion. She cringed, sickened with the images that crowded her mind. At least they wouldn't have Mikhail. She thought and remembered his pyre. She watched Karatapen as he worked, allowing his attention to detail to soothe her. His hands checked feathers on each of the arrows, relying this one or that until they were all perfect. He took out a small knife and began to whittle some new shafts for more arrows. He required nothing from her, not even conversation. With a friendly smile, Karatapen looked up, alert yet serene. Grateful for his acceptance, her eyes filled with tears. Karatapen, she said, speaking against the grief that stalked her, you're at peace with yourself. His expression became serious, touched by old shadows. I find happiness when it comes. Don't you long for more? Your own family? A son? She asked, aware that in running from her sorrow, that her questions were inconsiderate. What man does not wish for a son? But in this the wise Lord has been kind. He has given me Valimir to love as my own flesh. Though he's not of my body, just my heart. His words stung her. Valimir had been Karatapen's bridge back from his abyss. Though a 12-year-old boy, he had embraced life again and become reconciled with to his fate. Helena resisted. Through a 12-year-old boy, he had embraced life again and become reconciled to his fate. Helena resisted, wanting none of his peace. I don't want to feel love again. Karatapen's eyes were warm with sympathy, but his voice was sad. I believe you, Helena, but your feet take you on your path to the one God, providing lessons along the way. You must learn them, else face them another time. Are you a mystic? Your words are my grandfather's, but their comfort is cold. I'm no mystic, Helena, he said. My wisdom is the fruit of my age. Hear my words or not, it's your choice. Embarrassed by her outburst, Lena ran her hand through her hair. He did not deserve her abuse. Karatapen's words fell into silence. Why has Valimir been so good to me? He's with Huns, the filth of the Empire. Your words are strong, if inaccurate. The Huns are many tribes, a confederacy bound by language and custom. Valimir's people were conquered by them over 50 years ago. Over time, the Ostrogoths have changed from being vanquished to becoming trusted allies. Lena shook her head. But why is Valimir so different? Even his brother thinks nothing of rape. Karatapen withdrew into his thoughts, his face reflective. Lena waited as the moments passed. She became afraid that he would not answer. She despised herself for her curiosity, but much more for caring. Looking his age, Karatapen met her eyes. His mother was killed by a renegade band of Visigoths. She was pregnant, her belly deep with new life. She'd gone alone to a favorite spot by a quiet pond in the nearby woods. When Valimir's father, Valdarius, returned from the hunt, his wife and son were both missing. We searched, only finding them as it grew dark. Valimir was holding his mother, cradling her head in his lap, singing to her. His father tried to pull him away from the corpse. With each attempt, the lad became wilder. Finally, I was able to separate him from her. We spent time together. I knew what needed to be said. After Valderius bought me from King Rogleva at a considerable price, he worried about Valimir and thought I could do some good. I've been with him ever since. Nina looked at Karachapan's eyes, shining with tears. She whispered, "Was her death quick?" He stared at the flames. "No. She'd been raped so many times that her blood had spilled from her womb. As she lay in a pool of blood, they sliced open her belly and ripped out her child while she still breathed." Valimir had tried to cover her as best he could with his tunic and the fragments of her dress. When Valderius saw his wife, he cried. No one has seen him shed a tear since childhood. But he was not alone in his grieving. He paused. She'd been beautiful, and it was terrible to see what had been done. Elena's eyes were wet. All too easily, she could visualize how Valimir's mother had suffered. The images hit her like a blow, and she shut her eyes against them. Because of Valimir, she was safe and protected, alive. And Karachapan had said of the village, only one survivor. She buried her face in her hands. I can't bear it. There were women in that children, innocent children, old women who worked hard their whole lives with my friend Ariana. Now they're gone, as if they'd never been except as memories. He was quiet for a moment. Perhaps it was important, even necessary, that you survived. Your destiny is before you, unknown, but you still breathe, whole, intact. You don't understand. It's wrong that I'm alive. Mikkel is alone, without me. Nothing I can say. What has happened? But good can come from pain. You wonder at Valimir's kindness to you? Thank his memory of his mother. But he rides with Huns. How can I see past that? No one chooses their families. Valimir is what he is, an Ostrogoth. Though he fights as one with the tribe, he takes pain, not to make war on women and children. Be consoled by that difference. He's better than the Romans. Like Grelia, they killed children for sport. Her bitterness remained. Suddenly she remembered that Valimir and Karachapan had knowledge of her ransom. "How did you learn of my steward's reward?" she asked. Karachapan saw a deprecation. "I hear things that many do not. It might have been better had you not. Without Valimir's protection, you'd be dead. He decided to join Attila because he found your story intriguing." Her voice was hard with accusation. "Why would he care? Who would know? Who can know what's in a man's heart? The ransom is large," she stated. "Valimir doesn't look for more wealth. He lives for adventure. The story I told him, I must admit, was worthy of a Persian. It fired his imagination. You think I was lucky to survive? Yes. I can't be thankful for my life. Its price was too dear." Regiment nodded. His expression was pensive. Though he kept his eyes on her face, he was far away in thought. A stick fell in the fire with a thump. He blinked and began to gather his tools. Helena glimpsed his pain. "Karachapan, I'm sorry." His eyes met hers with surprise. "Why?" She drew in a deep breath. "For all that you have lost." His eyes softened. "I thank you for your sympathy." She spoke from her heart, and I for yours. The heaviness within her lightened. The feeling was bittersweet. Did Valimir tell you what happened to Mikkel? He was sick about it. Why did he bother about another man's son? His look was stern, without rancor. He cares for you, Helena. And because he cares, he's upset for your loss, else he wouldn't spare a thought. Valimir never lacks for a woman. At home, his mother's hatched plots to wed their daughters to him. He's never stayed long with anyone. None have slept in his tent. With you, though, he shows gentleness I haven't seen since he was a boy. If he gave you to Attila, his reward would be great. But instead, he protects you, making you his bride. Helena did not know what to say, not wanting to acknowledge how her heart felt, when Valimir's face lit up with a smile. "You care for him too, Helena." Her answering nod was almost imperceptible. She picked at her dress. "Do you think he would have been good to Mikkel?" Karachapan's expression was patient. "Yes." "Was I wrong to run? You shouldn't torture yourself with what could have been. Your plan was sound. How could you know that Grelia would follow you?" Her words tumbled out. "Valimir had promised he'd keep both of us safe. But after Grelia's sword and Ivan fell, I trusted no one. If I could only change it and bring back Mikkel. You need sleep, Helena. Lie down and rest. It will help heal your injuries. I don't think you should have any more of my medicine for sleep, though. I'll keep watch for Valimir." Without any further dissension, she followed his advice and was soon asleep, under the warm blankets and fur-lined skins. A noise awakened her. She sat up, rigid with fear. The fire had died back, losing its battle with darkness. Someone threw a piece of kindling on the hot embers. As it caught, the light illuminated Valmire's face. He looked tired and spent, betraying a weakness that had little to do with physical exhaustion. He carefully placed more brush and sticks on the pile. His face chilled her heart. It was devoid of feeling and remote. Watching him, she lay still with a deep and gnawing fear. As his eyes adjusted to the bright light, he saw that she was awake. A shadow passed across his features, but then he smiled. When he sat beside her, she forgot to be afraid. And that's chapter 9. So I will read chapter 10 next week. Hopefully this all worked well with the... I've been using my laptop microphone. Apparently that's better than the special lav mic. So I look forward to sharing more of my book with you next week. Have a good week. Take care.